Amazing. Thank you, Hunter, and welcome, Nikole. We're so happy to have you here. Can you just kind of jump right in and talk to us about some of the biggest challenges related to veteran transition and integration? I have so many thoughts and questions surrounding this topic, so just get going. I'm sure I'll have lots of little nuggets to plug in here.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget, so much. And thank you, Hunter. It's so great to be here with you guys talking about this absolutely massive topic, because it really is not only for the families, the service members going through transition, but there is just so much out there. It's colossal. So we surely couldn't cover it all in this conversation or the summit. But starting to touch on those challenges is a part of getting to the solution, right? The awareness of all the different facets of it. And I would say one of the biggest facets is that scope. There are so many resources out there and different parts of the equation when you're transitioning out, whether that's, after a few years or after a full career, really getting a hold of that and understanding that you are going through a massive change to identity, lifestyle, moving your family, and you're doing all of that while you're actively serving and to make sure that you transition well out to civilian life. That's a huge challenge all on its own. I think we can both agree about that. That's true whether you're retiring from a civilian job or the military, but the change in lifestyle, location, finding a new home, replanting the whole family, that's a massive job, one that should be started soon and talked about often with family and probably leadership and mentors.
Yeah. I had a conversation with someone earlier today in this event, and they were talking about a huge piece that they didn't know they'd get from the military was that social aspect. And my question is, how do you feel like maybe the military could do a little bit better job of just supporting folks as they transition out? Because I feel like there's just a huge adjustment from all of the people you're surrounded with, the identity that you cling to while you're in the military as someone, as a service member. How do you think the military as a whole can do a little bit of a better job? And I know this is also a massive topic in itself, but just kind of off the top of your head, what are a couple of things you think could kind of help soften that transition?
Yeah, well, there are a ton of resources, to be sure, out there on helping you find a new job, as far as getting your resources all moved to a new place. And there are both in the government side, in the DoD, and then also in the nonprofit sector, just endless resources, right? But when we're talking about somebody who's actively perhaps serving in the hardest role that they have in the military so far, with the most responsibility, and they're preparing to make that change, some of the things that I've heard and am experiencing, even my own family, are allowing people to explore this, not just in the last year of their career, but really prepare to make that transition well between 5 to 7 years ahead, and not stigmatizing those that choose to do that. I think normalizing that conversation and removing the huge stigma that exists at the leadership level would allow people to make that change in a much healthier, more wholesome way that eases both them and their families into a completely different identity.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, a lot of the advice about veteran to civilian transitions speaks to the veterans themselves, but what are some systemic changes in education, career, and society at large that need to occur to help veterans become fully integrated civilians?
Right. So one of the things that we're noticing, and this is obviously one facet to a huge and complex moving issue, is the move toward wellness and health for veterans in the way of cultural competency on the part of doctors that serve our veterans. We've had 20 years of combat veterans now moving through in different generations and starting to understand not only the culture they're coming from, but the mindset of a veteran and their families and how to serve them after they're exiting their service and transitioning. it requires a different level of knowledge, a different vocabulary. And so there are more resources geared, say, for example, at that industry, health, and really starting to become available for different industries. There are educational programs out there that help veterans become students and then transition into perhaps a brand new career field, because sometimes maybe your career wasn't what you dreamed of, or you're ready for something new. And so programs like the O2O program at Syracuse, or CVTI, the Center for Veteran Transition and Integration through Columbia University, are great programs. And actually, Columbia also has a program that helps the spouse to move through. And that was previously my own nonprofit, the Paradigm Switch. So that's a really great way to help move from identity with the support of an external, support to the family and veteran.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to grab a link to the paradigm shift. I definitely want to get that out to everybody who's participating here today, just to kind of get a little bit more knowledge on that. Now, Nikki, how do you feel like internally within a family, a spouse or anybody else within the family can support that service member as they transition? We talk a lot about military spouses stepping into their own, owning their own career, things like that. But how, like, as a familial unit, can a spouse kind of support their partner in that transition?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. So one of the things that we found when we were developing the work for the paradigm switch was that the military spouse transitions every 2 to 3 years. Every move, they are uprooted from identity, career, friends. And so they were really in need of that resource of identity reallocation and shift through the active duty career. However, the veteran is really going through that pivotal moment at the end. So it's really helpful to pass on that knowledge and that communication of hardship, and just know that they're not alone. I think communication within the family is key, and not falling into some of those pitfalls that we know exist of starting to shut down communication, stopping celebrating holidays together. Really be open and honest about where you are well-being and mentally. And then one of the things that the family can also do, and this is sometimes easier said than done, but as a system, we can support the military spouse with employment and career options so that he or she can help ease the transition for the veteran by sustaining employment and having some kind of consistency so that they can go through that change. Because we all know that it is a big shift. There is going to be a little bit of anxiety, and making sure that they have what they need to do it and move through all of the mental states that will surely exist is really how we do that, or start to do that in a way that looks at a healthy, happy civilian life afterwards. Even at best, if somebody is retiring after 20, 25, 30 years, which would be a very full and rich career, that might be a 50-year-old individual, and you've got a lot of life left to live after that. We want to do it as happy as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great segue into the next piece of our conversation. How do you feel like companies can create structures that support veterans in their transition into civilian employment? A lot of people come out like ready to take commands and move forward. And then what I've noticed is a lot of companies are really starting to welcome people in with a little bit more of a humanized approach. So more flexible PTO, more flexible work environment, things like that. And I think that a lot of people that come out of the military almost have like that same fear of they have to be at this point, at this time, like standing at attention. How can companies kind of take that fear a little bit into account as they help someone transition?
Yeah, I love this question. So one thing that I'll bring up is something that already exists and is highlighted at many companies, and Amazon comes to mind, is what you touched on, is the social part of leaving service, and then finding people that you can still connect with. So creating a veteran, subunit or a club or a group of people that can actually just, I was going to say commiserate, but that's not the right word. They could be together and have a shared culture, a shared understanding of what they're going through in that transition, and then adjusting to the life and resources that they need and have available to them at both their workplace and then in the local area is a fantastic way to do that. And second to that is something that I've touched on already during our conversation, but it's really just setting that culture of, as you said, if your company has a little bit more relaxed atmosphere, ensuring that somebody is really brought into that and allow them to have that period of adjustment. And many companies do, right, have an onboarding process. And that's really the key place to also ensure that the military member knows that the state they're in, is accepted within the company. And if that means that they need to have some adjustment or, a focus on mental health for a while, that would be a very helpful time to do it. A lot of the veterans that we're seeing are starting to pay attention to it now before they exit service, but any health concerns that they've had and they've put off. So letting them know that it's okay to start to deal with some of those things, if required, then that is a safe place to do it. I think it's one of the best things you can offer the veterans who are coming into your company.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we talked a little bit about the paradigm switch before. I want to kind of come back to it and dive a little bit deeper. How do you feel like programs like this one and the paradigm switch itself provide systemic support to service members leaving the military? And I would like for you to get, as detailed as you'd like for this, if you have any ideas or examples. I really just want to show people how these types of programs can really support this transition.
Yeah, so when we're looking at programs that are really geared toward trying to focus on shifting the identity of a veteran or a service member, their family member, which is really what the paradigm switch ended up doing. We started by trying to help spouses work. We then figured that virtual work is the way to keep them consistently employed. So, there are many places, and here is definitely one of them, right? To find employment that works for you. And that's wonderful. And the other facet that we were really figuring out, though, is that the identity shift constantly over and over and over again is really hard to go through. So knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, overcoming some of the personality points that maybe are keeping you from true growth, and then being able to identify with your core personality traits, right? You are working in a role in the military for 20 years, and then retire. It's hard not to say, I am a pilot. This is what I identify with. But really, you're kind, you're funny, you're artistic, you love music, I love to hike, right? And those identifiers transition with you to your new role. So when we're talking about that kind of deep work, that's really hard for a lot of people to do. But if we can start to create a conversation around that, and that was sort of the very core function for the paradigm switch. And now transitioning that to CBTI, where we're introducing the concept of supporting the service member as student, because that's a new role too for them. And sometimes that's a very difficult one to take on. Those things can support the family, the foundation of the tree, before the tree can then start to kind of open up and grow. That foundation is really key. If the service member can do that while they're still in, fantastic. Otherwise, just giving them the space and support to be able to do that and then move forward with a new career is fantastic. So I think that programs that recognize the facet of wellness, as well as employment, housing, healthcare, the litany of things that go with this, right? Moving to a new state, registering yourself as a new voter, right? There's so many different things that happen. That is one that people often forget. It sneaks up on them.
Now, we've mentioned here a few different types of programs and resources that veterans can utilize if they so choose to do so. Something that I've seen personally and that I've heard folks talk about is there's kind of, unfortunately, a little bit of like a mindset that some people have of like, they want to be like a tough guy mindset. I don't need any help. I'm good. I'm all set. What is the message that you would give to one, the service member who's transitioning, but then also the message that perhaps you give to a family member of theirs, just to kind of, nudge them in maybe the direction that they need to go in? Because it's the old concept of you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can offer all these programs, and some folks that may need them might not know that they need them or want to utilize them. What would your message be?
Yeah. So for the service member, I would definitely encourage them to consider, it's one thing to be by yourself, but it's different to consider yourself as a part of a family unit. And so when you're operating and transitioning as a family unit, you may not directly need those resources, but it's important to support everybody. So maybe think about looking into some of the resources or support, talking to somebody that can at least help some of your other members. And then maybe you realize, oh yeah, that was helpful. And this is the direction we should be going. For the family, when we're talking about that kind of shift in mindset, what comes to mind for me is having conversations with people that have already transitioned. So that person may need to just meet with different people, have some mentorship or peer support, and talk to people who have gone through it to see what resonates with them. And the space to have those thoughts and feelings, the F word, it may take some time, because true enough, for some career fields, that is not a normal cultural response. It is just not. And that's okay. It's all about taking those steps as you can. And I think the sooner you can do that, it alleviates the anxiety or the panic that can happen when you do it at the last minute, because that would panic anybody. And then you maybe end up in a place that you didn't really want to be. And I'm talking about like career wise, you just go into the closest thing in a panic.
Yeah. That is excellent advice. So a question from the audience: how do you ease the reentry for veterans and military spouses in your company? So while family support is crucial in the transition, it's also important to find a supportive space in job opportunities. What policies do your company have for promoting these ideals?
Yeah, so right now I'm working specifically with MSOFC, which is looking at SOF, health and wellness for the family, right, as well. So we're really focused on making sure that veterans are transitioning at any point, either in service or retirement, with their health records well in advance, and then they're transitioning with a good mindset of what they need to continue on in a healthy manner. So if I was talking to a civilian employer, that aspect and knowing, even if the person is completely healthy, there is going to be a shift in mindset, right? In creating new habits, creating new behaviors. And so allowing for those company policies for anybody, really. I mean, I would hope that a civilian would be given the same thing. It's just especially important. And stressing here that not all veterans are broken, right? They can be completely healthy and still need that space. But understanding that the diversity within the veteran sphere is also what makes them wonderful, and really getting to know them and what they bring to the table is a part of that conversation as well.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to talk about the diversity within the veteran sphere. I was moderating a discussion earlier with a veteran, and we were talking about, there's a significant and important population that has deployed to dangerous places, seen horrific things, they come back with an entirely, separate form of baggage than you have veterans who serve just here, on stateside, and they don't deploy, but as they transition out, they still have such an emotional attachment to what the military gave them. Because not all people truthfully join the military because they want to serve their country. Some people join just because they come from a poverty-ridden background. They don't have another means to get a paycheck, a roof over their head, meals in a day, health insurance, education. So do you have a message or, a thought towards anyone who is just kind of starting to peel themselves away from being a service member, and their attachment is really to, being in the military kept me alive, so to speak?
Yeah, I love that. That is an amazingly powerful way to look at this. And I think when you can start to really just look at and shape, and this is true for anybody who's gone in, it may not have been exactly the path that you wanted, may not have gone exactly the way you wanted either. But as you said, it's given you a set of skills, a set of traits, and starting to kind of shape what that looks like for the future for yourself, and being able to exit with that new vision of what you'd like to do is the gift of still having a job and being able to maybe do that if you do it soon enough. So, and I'll be honest, this is what my husband, who is getting, to the point of thinking about these things, he would really like to have that next thing be something completely different than what he's done. So, it does take a little bit, takes you off guard, but having that ability is really something that, as you said, it's a gift. And if you can harness that understanding, change your mindset, shift into thinking, what are my strengths and what do I want to do? There are people who can help you roadmap getting there. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of the support that you have right now. And there are so many resources and people that can help point you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting to the end of our session here. Nikki, one more question for you. How can veterans in our audience look into programs or support that can help them in their transition into civilian life? We've talked a lot about this already. So, just any final piece of advice that you would say, as you're transitioning, this is what, like step number one.
Yeah, I still think that depending on your service, your first step is going to be their transition program, their family center, their family readiness center, right? Or resource center on post, and seeing what they have available. It's going to be right there. They're going to be able to tell you what educational opportunities they have, what they offer there, or how they can get you, in the local or nearby area to something. From there, online is pretty much the sky is the limit, because not only does the DoD offer things now, especially post-pandemic, online to just about anybody who wants it, but there are programs from high-level nonprofits all the way down to grassroots nonprofits. And that's the wonderful thing. There are 40,000 veteran serving organizations in the United States. And most of them started by veterans who went through transition and found that there was a gap and they wanted to fill it. So depending on your career field or your service, there is something out there for everybody, truly. And I think just starting the conversation and being bold enough to take a step, there is absolutely nobody in the world that will fault you for it, and everybody will be there to catch you.
Incredible. Nikki, where can everybody find you? We're definitely getting the paradigm shift info out to our entire audience following this event. Where can everybody find you on social media, LinkedIn? Let us know.
Yeah, please find me on LinkedIn. That would be amazing. I'd love to connect with you. And then through MSOFC, the Military Special Operations Family Collaborative, we're doing amazing work, and we'd love to support each and every one of you.
Incredible. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate it. We cannot wait to welcome you back, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Take care.